The cargo bay doors hissed open at exactly 800 hours, just like they had every third Tuesday for the past 2 years. Taiwan looked up from his datapad and smiled. Velthar was nothing if not punctual. The Chitros courier stepped through the airlock with the careful, deliberate movements of his kind. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his dark green exoskeleton gleaming under the station's harsh white lights. 4 arms carried various containers, each secured with the precision that made the Chitros the most trusted couriers in known space. His large compound eyes swiveled toward Taiwan, and his mandibles clicked in what passed for a greeting. "Good morning, Velthar," Taiwan said, setting down his pad. "Right on time as always." The translation device on Velthar's chest flickered to life. "Greetings, Coordinator Taiwan. I have brought the scheduled biotech samples from the Kepler Research Station. 17 containers, all within acceptable temperature parameters." Taiwan walked over to help with the cargo, but something made him pause. Velthar's antennae were twitching more than usual. The thin, flexible appendages on top of his head rarely moved during their transactions. Today they seemed almost agitated, bending and straightening in rapid succession. "Everything okay?" Taiwan asked. Velthar's mandibles clicked several times in quick succession. "Yes. All is within normal parameters." But it wasn't. Taiwan had been working with alien species long enough to recognize when something was off. He had learned to read the small signs, the subtle changes in behavior that others dismissed. It was what made him good at his job. The other coordinators on Garrison 7 just processed shipments and moved on. Taiwan actually paid attention. He helped Velthar arrange the containers in the designated cold storage units. The Chitros usually worked with smooth efficiency, but today his movement seemed jerky, almost rushed. One of his secondary arms trembled slightly as he set down a container. "Velthar, are you sure you're all right?" Taiwan asked again. The alien stopped moving. His antennae went completely still, which somehow seemed worse than the twitching. "I am functional," he said through the translator. The device gave everyone the same neutral tone, but Taiwan thought he detected something different in the underlying clicks and whistles. Before Taiwan could press further, the cargo bay door opened again. Jihai strode in, her commander's uniform crisp despite the early hour. She was all business as usual. "Status report," she said without preamble. 17 containers delivered and being stored now," Taiwan replied. "All within temp specs." Jihai nodded, already looking at her own datapad. "Good. Velthar, your next delivery is scheduled for Station Apex 3, departure in 40 minutes. The fuel transfer is already underway." Velthar's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Commander, I request a delay in departure." 24 hours. Jihai looked up, her expression showing clear annoyance. "We don't do delays without proper authorization. You know the protocols. What's the reason?" There was a long pause. Taiwan watched Velthar carefully. The alien's forearms had all curled slightly inward, close to his body. It was a defensive posture, though he doubted Jihai would recognize it. "Personal matter," Velthar finally said. "Personal matter?" Jihai's tone made it clear what she thought of that. "You've been running this route for 2 years without a single delay. The shipment to Apex 3 is time-sensitive. You leave in 40 minutes as scheduled. Commander, perhaps we could..." Taiwan started. "No," Jihai cut him off. "We have protocols for a reason. Velthar, if there's a legitimate equipment malfunction, report it. Otherwise, you're cleared for departure." Velthar's antennae drooped slightly. "Understood, Commander." Jihai left without another word. Taiwan turned back to Velthar, but the alien had already moved to the far corner of the cargo bay, near the secondary storage units. He seemed reluctant to head back to his ship. "She means well," Taiwan said quietly. "The schedule pressure comes from higher up, not from her." "I understand human hierarchies," Velthar replied. "The commander follows her protocols. I will follow mine." They worked in silence for the next few minutes, finishing the storage process. Taiwan kept stealing glances at Velthar. The trembling in his secondary arms had gotten worse, and his exoskeleton seemed different somehow, though Taiwan couldn't quite place what had changed. Maybe the light was hitting it at a strange angle. The other day, shift workers began arriving, their voices echoing through the cargo bay as they prepared for the morning rush. Velthar moved further into the corner, away from the growing crowd. "Velthar?" Taiwan approached slowly. "Talk to me. What's wrong?" The alien's compound eyes fixed on him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Velthar's translator crackled to life. Do you know anything about Chitros Biology Coordinator Taiwan? A little, Taiwan admitted. I know you're from a high-gravity world. I know you prefer cooler temperatures. I know you're generally solitary except during trade negotiations. Do you know about molting? Taiwan felt a chill run down his spine. Like shedding your exoskeleton? Yes. Velthar's antennae twitched violently. It happens every 7 of your years. I have been in space for 6 years and 11 months. I thought I had more time. I thought I could return to my home colony before. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. You're about to molt, Taiwan said. Here now. Within the next few hours, Velthar confirmed. I should not have taken this delivery. I miscalculated. But the contract required completion, and Chitros honor their contracts. What happens if you molt here? Can't you just stay in your ship until it's over? Velthar's mandibles clicked in what might have been bitter amusement. You truly do not know our biology. When we molt, we become different. The rational mind retreats. Instincts take control. Ancient instincts from before we achieved sentience. Oh, what kind of instincts? Territorial, aggressive. We attack anything that comes near during the vulnerable period. It is why we molt in isolation chambers on our homeworld. It is why we never molt near other species. Taiwan's mouth went dry. How aggressive. Lethal, Velthar said simply. I have perhaps 4 hours before I lose control completely. I need to leave the station immediately. But the fuel transfer will not be complete for another 30 minutes. And flight protocols require pre-launch checks that will take 20 more. So you might not make it to empty space in time? Correct. Taiwan looked around the cargo bay. The morning shift was in full swing now. At least a dozen people moving between storage units and loading docks. We need to clear the bay. We need to— No, Velthar interrupted. If you raise an alarm, they will quarantine my ship. They will trap me here for my own safety. I have seen how humans handle biological threats. By the time the quarantine is lifted, I will have already— He trailed off again. Taiwan understood. By the time bureaucracy sorted itself out, Velthar would have already hurt someone, or worse. Okay, Taiwan said, his mind racing. Okay, let me think. The cargo bay continued its normal operations around them. Workers laughed and complained about the coffee machine being broken again. Someone dropped a container, and it clanged loudly against the metal floor. Normal sounds? Normal day, except nothing about this was normal. Taiwan made a decision. Listen, my shift ends in an hour. Most of the morning crew cycles out then too. The bay will be nearly empty for about 90 minutes during the shift change. Can you hold on until then? Perhaps, Velthar said. But it will be close. Already I feel the urge to defend this space. Every person who walks past seems like a threat. Then stay in this corner. I'll keep people away. We'll get through the next hour and then we'll figure out the rest. Why are you helping me? Velthar asked. It would be safer for you to report this immediately. Taiwan thought about that. Why was he helping? He barely knew Velthar beyond their professional interactions. The logical thing, the safe thing, would be to alert Jihai right now. But he remembered how carefully Velthar always handled the cargo. How the alien always asked about Taiwan's day, even though he didn't have to. How Velthar had once waited 3 hours for a delayed shipment, because he'd given his word it would be delivered on time. Because you'd do the same for me, Taiwan said finally. Velthar's antennae stilled. Yes, he said quietly. I would. The hour that followed was the longest of Taiwan's life. He positioned himself between Velthar and the main work area, redirecting people away from the corner with various excuses. Equipment checks, inventory counts, anything to keep the space clear. He watched Velthar deteriorate minute by minute. The trembling spread from the secondary arms to the primary ones. Cracks began appearing in the exoskeleton, thin lines that wept clear fluid. The alien's antennae never stopped moving now, tracking every sound and movement in the bay. Finally, blessedly, the shift change began. Workers filed out, chatting about their plans for the afternoon. The bay grew quieter. Jihai was the last to leave. She paused at the door, looking back at Taiwan. You're staying late? Just finishing up some inventory, he said, keeping his voice steady. I'll lock up. She nodded and left. The cargo bay door slid shut behind her. Taiwan turned back to Velthar and felt his blood turn to ice. The alien had moved to the main door controls. As Taiwan watched, Velthar's primary arms worked the panel with shaking movements. The door locked with a heavy clunk. The emergency Li Taewon backed away slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. The sound of Velthar's exoskeleton cracking echoed through the empty cargo bay like gunshots. Each split released more of that clear fluid which pooled on the floor beneath the alien's feet. "Velthar, stay calm," Taewon said, hating how his voice shook. "We can work through this." The alien's mandibles opened and closed rapidly, creating a clicking sound that raised the hair on the back of Taewon's neck. It was nothing like the measured, controlled clicks from before. This was frantic, almost panicked. "Cannot stay calm," Velthar managed through the translator. The device was starting to struggle, producing static between words. Biology, overriding, thought processes. Taewon's mind raced. He had to think. He had to find a solution. His eyes darted to the door controls. Velthar had locked it, but there had to be a manual override. Every station door had emergency protocols. He started moving toward the control panel, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. Velthar's head tracked him instantly, those dark compound eyes fixing on his position. All four arms tensed. "What are you doing?" Velthar asked, and this time there was definitely something wrong with his voice. Even through the translator, it sounded deeper, more guttural. "Just checking something," Taewon said. "That's all." "I'm not leaving. I'm just looking." He reached the panel and examined it quickly. His stomach dropped. The override required 2 authorized users to unlock from inside, a safety measure to prevent accidents. It meant he couldn't open the door alone. He needed Velthar's help, and Velthar was clearly in no condition to help anyone. "The door," Velthar said. His antennae were rigid now, pointing straight up. "You want to open it?" "No," Taewon lied. Do not lie to me." The roar came not from the translator, but from Velthar himself, a sound that was entirely alien and entirely terrifying. The Chitros took a stumbling step forward, then stopped, his whole body trembling with effort. "I am sorry," Velthar said, his voice returning to something closer to normal. "I did not mean—" "The instincts are very strong now. I can feel my rational mind slipping away. Like drowning. Like falling into darkness." Taewon forced himself to breathe slowly. Panicking would help no one. "How long do we have?" "How long before you completely lose control?" "Minutes. Perhaps an hour if I fight very hard. But the molt cannot be stopped once it begins. And when the molt completes, there will be no reasoning left. Only instinct." "What instincts exactly?" "What will you do?" Velthar's mandibles clicked softly. "I will defend this territory. I will attack anything I perceive as a threat, which will be everything, everyone. So we're talking about violent aggression, attack behaviors. Yes, I will try to kill you, Taewon. I will not want to. The part of me that is speaking now will be screaming inside, trying to stop myself, but the body will not listen. The instincts are older than civilization, older than thought itself." Taewon looked around the cargo bay, assessing his options. There were storage containers he could hide behind. Some of them were reinforced, designed to survive decompression. Maybe he could lock himself in one of the cold storage units. As if reading his thoughts, Velthar spoke again. "Do not try to hide. My species evolved as hunters. I will find you. And I am much stronger than you. Much faster." "Great," Taewon muttered. "That's just great." He pulled out his communicator and tried to call Jihai. Nothing, the signal was blocked. He tried the emergency channel. Still nothing. "I disabled communications before locking the door," Velthar said. "I could not risk someone trying to enter during the molt. They would die, so would I." Taewon snapped, fear making him angry. "I'm going to die in here because you locked me in with you." "I know." Velthar's voice was quiet, resigned. "I am sorry. I did not want this. I thought I had more time. I thought I could leave before. I have failed you. Failed everyone." The despair in that translated voice cut through Taewon's panic. He took a deep breath and forced himself to think clearly. Getting angry wouldn't help. Fear wouldn't help. He needed information. "Okay," he said. "Tell me everything. Tell me exactly what happens during a molt. Maybe there's something we can use, some way to minimize the danger." Velthar seemed to sag, his exoskeleton creaking ominously. The outer shell splits and falls away. Underneath is soft tissue, very vulnerable. It takes approximately 6 hours for the new exoskeleton to harden. During this time, the molting Chitros is completely exposed to predators. So the aggression is a defense mechanism. You're protecting yourself when you're most vulnerable. Yes, on our homeworld before we achieved civilization, molt time was when most deaths occurred. Those who could not defend themselves died. Those who were aggressive enough to drive away all threats survived. Evolution selected for violence during the molt. Taiwan started pacing, his mind working through the problem. But you're not on your homeworld. There are no predators here, just me. Can't you recognize that? Can't you override the instinct with logic? I wish I could. Another crack appeared in Velthar's exoskeleton, this one running down his primary right arm. But you must understand this is not a conscious choice. When you humans are drowning, you fight to reach the surface even if someone is trying to save you. You might pull them down with you, even kill them accidentally because the panic response is stronger than thought. This is like that, but much worse. There has to be something. Some way to make you recognize me as safe, as not a threat. Velthar was quiet for a moment. His antennae drooped, then straightened again. There is one thing, but it would not work. We do not have the resources or the time. Tell me anyway. In ancient times, before isolation chambers, young chitras sometimes molted in family groups. The adults would guard the vulnerable young during their molts. To prevent the young from attacking family members, there was a bonding ritual. Chemical recognition. Taewon stopped pacing. Chemical recognition? Like pheromones? Similar. The young chitras would be exposed to the scent markers of the adult guardians before the molt began. The instincts would recognize those markers as safe, as nest, as protected territory rather than threat. Could we do that? Could you smell me or whatever and recognize me as safe? The ritual requires specific preparation. Controlled exposure over several days. Exchange of chemical markers through contact. We have at most 1 hour, probably less, and I do not have the control necessary to perform the ritual safely. I might hurt you in the attempt. Another piece of exoskeleton cracked, this time along Velthar's back. The alien hissed in pain, a sound that needed no translation. He stumbled sideways, catching himself against a storage container. Taewon watched the clear fluid dripping from the cracks in Velthar's shell and felt a strange calm settle over him. He had made his decision. I'm not leaving you, he said. Velthar's head snapped up. You must find a way. Break through the walls if necessary. Alert security. Save yourself, the walls are reinforced. I'd need cutting tools we don't have. By the time security breaks through, you'll already be fully in molt mode and I'll already be dead. So that's not an option. Then hide. Please, Taewon. Hide and survive. Perhaps the molt will pass before I find you. You said yourself I can't hide from you. You'll hunt me down within minutes. Then what do you suggest? Velthar's voice was rising again, that guttural edge returning. What is your brilliant human solution to impossible problems? Taewon walked to the computer terminal on the far wall. His hands were steady now. Fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach, but it was manageable. He had a plan, even if it was a terrible one. I'm going to learn everything there is to know about Chitros biology, he said, pulling up the station's database. And then we're going to try that bonding ritual you mentioned. Did you not hear me? It requires days of preparation. We have minutes. Then we'll improvise. Humans are good at that. It's kind of our thing. Velthar made a sound that might have been a laugh or a growl. You are insane. Probably, Taewon agreed, already scrolling through biological data on the screen. But I'm the only option you've got right now. So let's make it work. The database had surprisingly detailed information on Chitros physiology. Taewon read as fast as he could, absorbing details about exoskeleton composition, sensory organs, neural structures, and metabolic processes. Behind him, Velthar collapsed to his knees. The sound of cracking exoskeleton continued faster now. The molt was accelerating. Taewon found a section on chemical communication. Chitros used a combination of scent markers and pheromones for identification and social bonding. Their antennae could detect trace amounts of chemical compounds, creating a unique signature for each individual. The bonding ritual involved mutual exposure to these signatures over time. But there was a footnote about emergency bonding procedures. He read it twice, his mouth going dry. Velthar, he said slowly, it says here that emergency bonds can be formed through blood exposure. Yes, Velthar's voice was barely recognizable now. Direct chemical introduction, but dangerous. Very dangerous. Why dangerous? Because it requires the molting chitros to wound the bonded individual. To taste their blood with a blade bit into Taewan's palm and blood welled up immediately. He had cut deeper than intended, but there was no taking it back now. The pain was sharp and bright, focusing his scattered thoughts into a single point of clarity. Velthar's entire body went rigid. His antennae shot straight up, then began moving in rapid circles. Every compound eye seemed focused on Taewan's bleeding hand. "I can smell it," Velthar said, his voice distorted by the failing translator. "Your blood, so different from Chitros. So strange." Taewan took a slow step forward, keeping his wounded hand extended. "Is that good or bad? I do not know anymore. I cannot think clearly. The rational part of me is getting smaller, quieter. The ancient part is waking up, and it is so much louder." Velthar's mandibles clicked rapidly. "It says you are prey. It says you are threat. It says you are food. But I'm not," Taewan said firmly. "I'm Taewan. I'm your friend. I'm the person who's helped you with deliveries for 2 years. The ancient part does not care about deliveries." Velthar's secondary arms began twitching. "It does not care about friendship. It only cares about survival." Taewan took another step closer. Blood dripped from his hand onto the metal floor, each drop making a soft sound in the quiet cargo bay. "Then let's teach it something new. Let's teach it that I'm safe, that I'm part of your nest, or whatever you want to call it. You are being very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," Taewan admitted. "Now what? How does this work? Do you need to touch the blood with your antennae?" Velthar's whole body shuddered. More cracks appeared in his exoskeleton, spreading like a broken windshield. "Yes, the antennae contain the primary chemical sensors, but you must come closer, much closer." Every instinct Taewan possessed screamed at him to run, to put as much distance between himself and the dangerous alien as possible. He ignored those instincts and took 3 more steps forward. He was now within arm's reach of Velthar. "Okay," he said. "I'm here." Velthar's antennae slowly extended toward him, the thin appendages trembling. They were longer than Taewan realized, each one almost 2 feet in length. They moved independently, testing the air around him. "Do not move suddenly," Velthar warned. "The instinct interprets sudden movement as attack. I will not be able to stop myself from defending." Taewan stood perfectly still as the antennae got closer. They brushed against his arm, light as feathers. Then one of them touched the blood on his palm. Velthar went completely rigid again. "I taste you," the alien whispered. "Iron salt, proteins I do not recognize, carbon chains that are similar to Chitros but structured differently. You are so alien, so completely alien." "Is the bond forming?" Taewan asked quietly. "I do not know. I cannot tell what is instinct and what is thought anymore. They are blending together." Velthar's voice was fading, the translator struggling to keep up. "I know I should recognize you. I know you are trying to help. But the ancient voice says you are wrong. You are wrong-shaped and wrong-smelling and wrong in every way." The antennae pressed harder against Taewan's palm, and he bit back a gasp of pain. They were rougher than they looked, almost abrasive. He could feel them moving against the cut, sampling his blood. "Tell me about your homeworld," Taewan said suddenly. Velthar's head tilted. "What? Your homeworld? You've mentioned it before but never described it. Tell me now. Help your rational mind stay present. Why does this matter? Because I need you to stay you for as long as possible. So talk to me. Describe your home." There was a long pause. Then Velthar's mandibles clicked softly, a more measured rhythm than before. "It is called Ketrai. The name means red sky in the old language. Our sun burns a deep orange and the atmosphere filters it to red during sunset." "Sounds beautiful," Taewan said. "Keep going. The gravity is 1.4 times Earth standard. Everything is denser, heavier. Our cities are built low to the ground because it requires too much energy to build tall. We prefer underground spaces anyway. They feel safer. Because of the molt instinct, the need to hide when vulnerable." "Yes. Even now, even civilized and rational, we Chitros feel more comfortable in enclosed spaces." "Open areas make us nervous." Taewan glanced around the cargo bay. It was massive, with high ceilings and wide open floor space. "So this is basically your nightmare right now, molting in a huge open room." "I did not think of it that way, but yes. The ancient part of me hates this space. It wants to find a small dark corner and defend it until the molt completes." "Is that why you were standing in that corner earlier? When the shift was still here?" "Yes, I was trying to make myself feel safe. It did not work very well. The antennae withdrew from Taewon's palm and he tried not to show his relief. They had left small scratches that stung. Velthar's compound eyes stared at him, and Taewon wished he could read the alien's expression better. Was the bond forming? Was any of this working? I can still smell you, Velthar said. Your chemical signature is registering now, but I do not know if the instinct recognizes it as safe. Everything is confused. Then we keep trying. Taewon looked down at his palm. The bleeding had slowed but not stopped. What else can we do? Is there more to the ritual? In traditional bonding, there would be time. Days of exposure. The scent would become familiar gradually, naturally. We are trying to force something that should take days into minutes. It may not work. It has to work, Taewon said firmly, because the alternative is unacceptable. Velthar made a sound that was almost a laugh. You are very determined for someone about to die. I'm not going to die, and neither are you. We're going to get through this. Such confidence. Is this a human trait? Stubbornness is definitely a human trait. We're really good at refusing to accept reality when we don't like it. Another large section of Velthar's exoskeleton cracked and fell away, hitting the floor with a clatter. Beneath it was soft tissue, pale and vulnerable. Velthar hissed in pain, then immediately tensed, his forearms spreading wide in a defensive posture. Taewon froze. The change in Velthar's body language was dramatic. The alien suddenly looked much more dangerous, more predatory. His mandibles opened wide, revealing inner structures that Taewon had never seen before. Sharp structures, designed for cutting, Velthar, he said carefully. Threat, Velthar growled. The translator was barely working now, producing more static than words. Threat nearby. Must defend. Must protect. I'm not a threat. Remember? We just did the bonding ritual. You know my scent now. Scent is familiar, unknown, cannot tell. Too confused. Too much pain. Taewon realized the problem. The pain from the molt was overwhelming Velthar's ability to process information. The rational mind was losing ground not just to instinct but to pure sensation. He needed to help Velthar focus on something other than the pain. Listen to my voice, Taewon said, keeping his tone calm and steady. Focus on my voice. You know this voice. I'm the person who always jokes about the coffee machine being broken. I'm the person who told you about my sister getting married last year. I'm the person who helped you reorganize the cold storage units that one time because you said the previous system was inefficient. Velthar's antennae twitched. I remember. The cold storage. You listened to my suggestions even though humans usually do not care what Chitros think about their systems. That's right. Because your suggestions were good. And because I respect you. Respect, Velthar repeated slowly. Humans use that word often. I am still learning what it means to your species. It means I value your opinions. It means I think you're good at your job. It means I trust you. Trust. Velthar's posture relaxed slightly. That is important to humans. More important than to most species. Is it not important to Chitros? We have contracts, agreements, those are binding. Trust is less concrete. But I think I understand it now. You trust me not to hurt you even though I am becoming dangerous. Exactly. Your trust may be misplaced. Maybe, Taewon agreed. But I don't think so. They stood in silence for a moment. Taewon could hear his own heartbeat loud in his ears. He could hear the creak and crack of Velthar's exoskeleton continuing to break apart. He could hear the distant hum of the station's life support systems. Tell me about your family, Velthar said suddenly. The request surprised Taewon. My family? Yes, you mentioned a sister. Tell me about her. Help me remember that you are a person, not prey, because the ancient part of my mind is getting very loud now, and I need reminders of why I should fight it. Taewon started talking. He told Velthar about his sister Hei-In, who was a botanist on Mars. He told him about his parents who still lived in Seoul and sent him care packages, even though shipping to a deep space station was expensive. He told him about his childhood, about learning to swim in the Han River, about his first day of school. Velthar listened, his antennae oriented toward Taewon the entire time. Occasionally he would ask a question, and Taewon would answer. It was strange having a casual conversation while standing in a locked room with an alien who was slowly transforming into something dangerous. But it seemed to be working. Velthar's aggressive posture softened as they talked. His mandibles stopped clicking quite so frantically. and his antennae, which had been waving erratically, began to move in more controlled patterns. IML 2 hours had passed since the molt began in earnest. Taiwan had lost track of time. His entire focus narrowed to watching Velthar and keeping the alien's rational mind engaged. They had talked about everything and nothing. Taiwan told stories about Earth, about humanity's stumbling journey into space, about the first contact with alien species. Velthar, when he could manage it, shared fragments of Chitros history and culture. But the gaps between coherent speech were growing longer. Velthar would fall silent for minutes at a time, his body rigid with pain or tension. Sometimes his mandibles would click in patterns that the translator couldn't process. Sometimes he would make sounds that were purely animal, purely instinctive. The molt was accelerating. Nearly 3/4 of the old exoskeleton had fallen away now, leaving Velthar's body mostly exposed. The new shell underneath was forming, but it was still soft, still vulnerable. In the harsh lights of the cargo bay, Taiwan could see it moving slightly, like something alive and separate from Velthar himself. "Tell me," Velthar said suddenly, his voice rough. "Why did you choose this work?" "Deep space logistics. It is not glamorous." Taiwan was grateful for the question, for any sign that Velthar was still present in his own mind. "I like helping things run smoothly, making sure supplies get where they need to go. It matters even if it's not exciting. You could have stayed on Earth. Why leave your home planet? I wanted to see more of the universe. Wanted to meet other species, learn how they think. And Earth was getting too crowded for me. Too many people, too much noise. So you came to deep space for silence?" "Partly. But also for this." Taiwan gestured at the cargo bay at Velthar. "For moments like this where I actually get to understand someone completely different from me." "This moment specifically?" There was dark humor in Velthar's tone. "Being trapped with a molting alien who might kill you? Well, maybe not this specific moment. But the connection part, the understanding part, that's what I came for." Velthar's antennae drooped. "I am not much of a connection right now. More like a warning about xenobiology. You're still you, still in there. I can hear it in your voice, barely. The voice is getting quieter, Taiwan. Soon it will be silent and only the ancient part will remain. And that part does not know you. Does not care about your stories or your kindness. It only knows fear and violence." Taiwan had been afraid of hearing those words, but now that they were spoken, he found himself calm. "Then we make sure the ancient part knows me too. We keep trying the bonding process, and we tried. You let me taste your blood. I know your scent now, but I do not know if it registered as safe or just as familiar. There is a difference. Then what else can we do? There has to be something more." Velthar was quiet for a long moment. His body shuddered as another section of exoskeleton cracked. He made a pained hissing sound, then forced himself to speak. In the ancient bonding practices, before technology, before civilization, there was more than just scent. There was sound. Sound. Yes. The young Chitros would become accustomed to the sounds of their guardians. Heartbeat. Breathing. The rhythm of life. These sounds would be recognized as safe, as family, as nest. Taiwan thought about that. So if you could hear my heartbeat, my breathing, it might help reinforce the bond? Perhaps. But Chitros hearing is different from human hearing. We perceive vibrations more than sound waves. We feel rhythm more than we hear it. How close would you need to be to feel my heartbeat? Very close. Touching close, that was a problem. Touching Velthar in his current state seemed like an excellent way to trigger an attack. But Taiwan was running out of options and time was running out even faster. He looked around the cargo bay searching for alternatives. His eyes fell on a handheld scanner on a nearby workstation. It was designed to check cargo container integrity, but it worked by sending out sonic pulses and measuring the return vibrations. "What if I used a tool to create the rhythm?" he asked. "Something that could broadcast my heartbeat pattern to you?" Velthar's antennae twitched with interest. "That might work. The ancient instincts respond to rhythm. Consistent, predictable rhythm means safety, means stability, means nest." Taiwan grabbed the scanner and examined it quickly. It had adjustable frequency settings. He could probably tune it to match his heart rate. It would take some trial and error, but it was better than doing nothing. He placed his fingers on his own neck, feeling for his pulse. His heart was beating faster than normal, adrenaline still pumping through his system. He counted the beats per minute, then programmed the scanner to emit pulses at the same rate. The device hummed to life, sending out regular vibrations, Taiwan could barely hear them, but Velthar's reaction was immediate. All four of his arms went rigid. His antennae shot straight up, then began moving in tight circles. I feel it, Velthar said. The rhythm. It is strange, not chitros, but consistent, regular. Is it helping? I do not know yet. Keep it going. Let me learn it. Taiwan held the scanner steady, maintaining the pulse pattern. He watched Velthar carefully, looking for any sign of how the alien was responding. The antennae continued their circling motion, and gradually Velthar's defensive posture began to relax. It is like a song, Velthar said after several minutes. A simple song, one note repeating, but there is comfort in repetition. The ancient part of my mind recognizes this. That's good, right? Yes, rhythm means life. It means something living nearby, something breathing and moving and existing. The question is whether the ancient instincts will interpret that as threat or as nest. Taiwan adjusted the scanner slightly, making the pulses a bit stronger. How do we make sure it's interpreted as nest? Proximity, consistency, time. If the rhythm stays constant, stays near, stays non-threatening, the instincts will eventually accept it. We'll categorize it as part of the environment, as safe. How long do we need? Hours, but I do not have hours of rational thought left. Perhaps one more hour before the molt reaches its critical phase. After that, I will not be able to communicate. Will not be able to control my actions. 1 hour. Taiwan could work with 1 hour. He had to. He moved closer to Velthar, still holding the scanner. The alien tensed but didn't retreat. Taiwan positioned himself about 6 feet away, close enough that the vibrations would be clear but far enough to hopefully avoid triggering an attack. Talk to me, Taiwan said. Tell me more about Chitros culture, about your family, about anything. Keep your rational mind present as long as possible. Velthar's mandibles clicked softly. My family. I have not thought about them in some time. I have been traveling for almost 7 years now. Do you miss them? Yes, more than I expected when I left. Chitros are solitary by nature, but we still form connections. My parent group had 4 adults who raised me. This is common among our people. Shared parenting reduces the burden and increases survival odds. 4 parents. That must have been interesting. It was normal to me. One taught me navigation. One taught me mathematics. One taught me social protocols. One taught me history. Each had their specialty. Which one were you closest to? Velthar hesitated. The history teacher. Dalamon. He was old even by Kitros standards, and he had traveled widely in his youth. He told me stories of other worlds, other species. He made me want to leave Ketrai and see the universe for myself. He sounds like a good teacher. He was. He died 3 years ago. I received the message while on a delivery run to the outer colonies. I could not return in time for the memorial ceremony. Taiwan heard the pain in Velthar's voice, even filtered through the struggling translator. I'm sorry. Death is part of existence. We Chitros accept this, but I wish I could have said farewell. Wish I could have thanked him for giving me the courage to leave home. I think he knew. Teachers usually know when they've made an impact. Perhaps. Velthar's body shuddered again. I am telling you this now because I may not have another chance. Because if the molt takes me completely, if I cannot control myself, I want someone to know that I had a life before this moment. That I was more than just instinct and violence, and you're still more than that. You're still Velthar, still the courier who's always on time, still the person who cared enough about others to lock himself in here to protect them. That person is fading. I can barely hold on to coherent thoughts now. The pain is overwhelming everything. And underneath the pain I can feel something else rising, something angry and afraid and very, very old. The scanner continued its steady pulse, broadcasting Taiwan's heartbeat rhythm into the space between them. He prayed silently that it was enough, that somehow this strange improvised ritual would work where logic said it shouldn't. Describe the feeling, Taiwan said. What does it feel like when the instinct rises? Like drowning in reverse, like being pulled up from deep water into air I cannot breathe. The rational mind exists at the bottom of the ocean, quiet and cold and calm. The instinct exists at the surface, hot and bright and violent. I am being dragged from one to the other and I cannot stop it. But you're fighting it. You're still here, still talking to me. For now. But soon the ocean will be too far below to reach. And then there will only be the burning surface world where everything is threat. And Taiwan felt Velthar's presence inches away from him. He could hear the alien's breathing, harsh and rapid. Could smell something sharp and chemical, probably a byproduct of the molt. His hand trembled slightly where he held the scanner, but he kept the rhythm steady, consistent, non-threatening. Something touched his shoulder. He jerked involuntarily, his eyes flying open. Velthar's primary right arm rested against him, the clawed appendage remarkably gentle despite its threatening appearance. The alien's antennae were brushing against Taiwan's face, moving across his skin in delicate sweeps. Velthar's mandibles clicked softly, then he made a sound that didn't need translation. It was questioning, uncertain, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "It's me," Taiwan whispered. "It's Taiwan. You know me, remember?" The antennae moved to his neck, to his chest, mapping his body. Taiwan forced himself to remain still, even though his heart was racing so fast he thought it might burst. The scanner continued its steady pulse, and he noticed Velthar's antennae pause when they got close to it, as if recognizing the rhythm. Velthar made another sound, this one almost contemplative. His grip on Taiwan's shoulder tightened slightly, then relaxed. The alien's head tilted, examining him from multiple angles with those dark compound eyes. Then Velthar stepped back. He stood there for a long moment, all four arms hanging loose at his sides. His antennae were still oriented toward Taiwan, tracking him. But the aggressive posture was gone. The predatory tension had drained away, replaced by something that looked almost like confusion. Taiwan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Did it work? Do you recognize me?" Velthar didn't answer. The translator had finally died completely, leaving only the alien's natural sounds. But he didn't attack, didn't lunge. Instead, he moved slowly to the corner of the cargo bay, the same corner he had occupied at the beginning of this ordeal. He settled into that corner, his body folding in on itself. His antennae remained pointed at Taiwan, tracking his position even as Velthar seemed to be trying to make himself smaller. Taiwan understood. The ancient instinct had identified him as nest, as safe, as something to be protected rather than attacked. But Velthar was still in molt, still vulnerable, and the instinct was telling him to hide until the process completed. "Okay," Taiwan said quietly. "That's okay. You stay there. I'll stay here. We'll just wait it out." He sat down on the floor, keeping the scanner running. His legs were shaking from the adrenaline crash, and he needed to sit before he fell. He positioned himself about 20 feet from Velthar's corner, far enough to give the alien space, but close enough that the scanner's pulses would still reach him. The hours that followed were the longest of Taiwan's life. He sat on the cold metal floor watching Velthar, making sure the scanner kept working. His arm went numb from holding it in the same position, so he switched to his other hand. His wounded palm ached, dried blood cracking when he flexed his fingers. He was thirsty and needed to use the bathroom, but he didn't dare move more than necessary. Velthar occasionally shifted position, his new exoskeleton slowly hardening. The process looked painful. Sometimes the alien would make small sounds of distress, and Taiwan would talk to him quietly, maintaining that connection even though Velthar could no longer respond. "You're doing great," Taiwan said. "Just a few more hours. The hardest part is over. You didn't hurt me. You didn't hurt anyone. The bond worked. You should be proud of that." Velthar's antennae twitched at the sound of his voice. "I'm going to tell everyone about this," Taiwan continued. "About how brave you were. About how you locked yourself in here to protect the crew, even though it meant putting yourself in danger. That's real courage, Velthar. That's the kind of thing people should know about." He kept talking, filling the silence with words. He talked about his plans for the weekend, about the message he needed to send his sister, about the book he'd been reading. Mundane things. Normal things. The kind of conversation they might have had during a regular delivery. And slowly, gradually, Velthar seemed to relax. The defensive curling of his body eased. His antennae, while still tracking Taiwan, moved in calmer patterns. Time passed. Taiwan wasn't sure how much. His communicator was useless with the bay's system still locked down, and there were no windows to track the station's simulated day-night cycle. He existed in an eternal now, where the only markers were the continuing changes in Velthar's appearance. At some point, Taiwan realized he'd been talking for so long his throat was raw. He stopped and just sat in silence, maintaining the scanner's rhythm. His eyes drooped. He was exhausted, running on nothing but adrenaline and stubbornness. A sound jolted him back to alertness. Velthar was moving, rising from his corner. Taiwan tensed, suddenly wide awake. The alien's new exoskeleton had hardened enough that his movements were smooth again, coordinated. He approached Taiwan slowly, each step deliberate. Taiwan stayed seated, kept the scanner running. "It's okay," he said, though he wasn't sure if he was reassuring Velthar or himself. Velthar stopped a few feet away and carefully lowered himself to sit, mirroring Taiwan's position. His antennae extended toward the scanner, then toward Taiwan's chest. He seemed to be comparing the rhythms, verifying that they matched. Then Velthar did something unexpected. He reached out with one primary arm and gently tapped his clawed hand against the floor in a steady pattern. The same pattern as the scanner. The same pattern as Taiwan's heartbeat. Taiwan felt his throat tighten with emotion. Even without words, even without rational thought, Velthar was trying to communicate, was trying to show that he understood, that he recognized the bond. "Yeah," Taiwan said softly. "That's right. That's my heartbeat. That's me." They sat together in the cargo bay, two beings from completely different worlds connected by rhythm and trust and desperation. The scanner continued its steady pulse. Velthar continued tapping his clawed hand against the floor, and Taiwan continued to hope that when this was over, they would both walk out alive. More time passed. Taiwan found himself drifting, exhaustion pulling at his consciousness. He jerked awake several times, fighting to stay alert. But his body was reaching its limit. He hadn't slept in over 20 hours, and the stress was taking its toll. His eyes closed. Just for a moment, he told himself. Just to rest them. When he opened them again, everything had changed. The cargo bay lights had shifted to night cycle, meaning at least 6 hours had passed. The scanner lay on the floor next to him, its battery dead. And Velthar was gone from his sitting position. Taiwan's heart slammed against his ribs. He sat up quickly, scanning the bay for the alien. Had Velthar left? Had the bond broken when the scanner stopped? Where was he? He found Velthar in the same corner as before, but something was different. The alien's new exoskeleton was fully hardened, gleaming dark green under the dim lights. He was completely still, and for a horrible moment Taiwan thought something had gone wrong. Thought Velthar had died during the final stage of the molt. Then Velthar's antennae moved, orienting toward Taiwan. The alien stirred, rising smoothly to his feet. His movements were coordinated now, precise. The awkwardness of the molt was gone. Taiwan stood on shaky legs, his muscles protesting after hours on the hard floor. Velthar, are you back? The alien approached, and Taiwan noticed the translator device was blinking. It was rebooting, trying to reconnect. After a moment, it crackled to life. Taiwan. Velthar's voice came through the speaker, and it was his voice again, coherent and controlled. You are unharmed. Yeah, Taiwan said, relief flooding through him. Yeah, I'm okay, are you? The molt is complete. The new exoskeleton has hardened. I am functional. Velthar paused. I remember fragments. You stayed. You did not leave. I couldn't leave. The door was locked, remember? You could have broken through the walls, could have called for help, could have hidden in one of the reinforced containers. But you stayed in the open. You maintained the rhythm pulse even when I approached. You trusted the bond would hold. Did it? Did you recognize me? Velthar's mandibles clicked softly. Yes, your scent registered as nest. Your heartbeat rhythm registered as family. The ancient part of my mind, the part that controls molt behavior. It identified you as safe, as something to be protected rather than attacked. Taiwan felt his knees go weak with relief. So it worked. The emergency bonding actually worked. It should not have. The procedure requires days of preparation, controlled exposure, proper chemical exchange protocols. What we did was improvised, rushed, and had a very low probability of success, but it worked anyway. Yes. Velthar's antennae drooped slightly. Because you refused to give up. Because you stayed calm when logic would have demanded panic. Because you kept talking to me, kept reminding me who I was even when I could no longer respond. That's what friends do. Friends. Velthar repeated the word slowly. I told you before that I was still learning what that word means to humans. I think I understand it better now. He moved to the door controls and began working them. Taiwan heard the locks disengaging, the security systems powering down. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing the empty Koshi sat behind her desk in the command center. her expression carefully neutral in the way that meant she was actually furious. Taiwan and Velthar stood before her, having just finished explaining the events of the past 12 hours. The cargo bay had been locked down for investigation. Station security had reviewed the surveillance footage. Medical had examined both Taiwan and Velthar. And now came the consequences. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," Jihai said, her voice dangerously calm. "You, Velthar, knew you were about to undergo a biological process that would make you violently dangerous. And instead of reporting this immediately to station authorities, you locked yourself and my logistics coordinator in a cargo bay together." "That is correct, Commander," Velthar said. His translator was working perfectly now, his voice steady. "I believed this was the safest option. The safest option would have been to request immediate quarantine before the molt began. We have protocols for biological hazards, procedures designed specifically for situations like this. Your procedures would have required time, authorizations, medical evaluations. By the time all protocols were completed, the molt would have already begun, and I would have been trapped in a small quarantine cell, alone and in pain with guards outside the door. When the instinct took control, I would have attempted to break through the walls. People would have been hurt trying to contain me. So instead you locked yourself in with Coordinator Taiwan and put him at direct risk of death. I did not intend for him to be trapped inside. He chose to stay." Jihai's eyes shifted to Taiwan. "Did you understand the danger?" "Yes, Commander," Taiwan said. "And you chose to stay anyway? Chose to attempt an emergency bonding ritual that, by your own admission, had a low probability of success?" "Yes, Commander." "Why?" Taiwan considered the question. He could give the professional answer, talk about asset protection and station safety, but that wasn't the real reason, and Jihai would see through it immediately. "Because leaving him alone seemed wrong," he said finally. "And because I thought we could find a solution if we worked together. That was not your decision to make. Station safety is my responsibility, not yours. You're right. I should have found a way to alert you. But communications were down due to the electromagnetic interference from the solar activity, and Velthar had locked the door controls. By the time I realized I was trapped, the molt was already too far advanced to safely interrupt. It wasn't entirely true. He'd had options. He could have tried harder to break through the walls or override the door controls, but he'd chosen not to, and they both knew it." Jihai leaned back in her chair, studying them both. "The regulations are very clear about unauthorized biological experiments. What you two did violated at least a dozen safety protocols." "I accept full responsibility," Velthar said immediately. "Coordinator Taiwan acted only to preserve his own life once I had trapped him. I am the one who created the dangerous situation." "That's not true," Taiwan protested. "I made my own choices. I chose to attempt the bonding ritual. I chose to stay in the open rather than hide. Commander, if anyone should face consequences, it should be me." "Oh, you'll both face consequences," Jihai said. "But the question is what kind? I could file formal charges. Report this to Central Administration. You'd both be suspended pending investigation, possibly removed from your positions." Neither Taiwan nor Velthar responded. There was nothing to say. Jihai pulled up something on her console, reading for a moment. "However, I've also been reviewing the surveillance footage. I've watched you, Coordinator Taiwan, spend hours talking to Velthar, keeping him calm, preventing a complete loss of control. I've watched you improvise a solution using equipment never designed for that purpose. And I've watched Velthar fight his own biology to avoid hurting you." She paused, her expression softening slightly. "What you did was reckless and violated every protocol we have. It was also remarkably brave, and it probably saved lives. If Velthar had lost control before reaching empty space, if his ship had malfunctioned during molt, we would have had a very different outcome." "So what happens now?" Taiwan asked. "Now we deal with the bigger problem. News of this incident is spreading through the station, and it's not going to stay here. The Chitros Collective will want to know what happened. Other species will want to know. You've created an unprecedented situation, and that means attention. Lots of it." As if on cue, her console beeped. She glanced at it and sighed. "Speaking of which, I'm receiving a priority communication from Chitros diplomatic channels. They want to speak with Velthar immediately." Velthar's antennae drooped. "I expected this. The Collective does not approve of molting away from homeworld. They will consider this a failure of duty." "Can they punish you for it?" Taiwan asked. They can revoke my courier license. They can ban me from Chitros space. They can do many things. Jihai stood up. Then let's find out what they want. Conference room 2, both of you. And Velthar, I suggest you let me handle the diplomatic aspects. Humans have gotten good at dealing with bureaucracy. They moved to the conference room, a small space dominated by a large view screen. Jihai activated the communication system, and after a moment the screen filled with the image of 3 Chitros. They were older than Velthar, their exoskeletons showing the darker coloration that came with age. Their antennae were completely still, a sign of formal protocol. I am Commander Jihai of Station Garrison 7. I'm speaking on behalf of Courier Velthar. The center Chitros spoke, his translator producing a formal, clipped tone. I am Elder Ketvar speaking for the Chitros Collective. We have received preliminary reports of the incident. Courier Velthar, you underwent molt while away from designated molting facilities. That is correct, Elder, Velthar said. This is a severe breach of collective protocol. You endangered yourself and alien species in the process. I did endanger others. I accept responsibility for this failure. Taewon wanted to interrupt to defend Velthar, but Jihi caught his eye and shook her head slightly. Let this play out, her expression said. What is more concerning, Elder Ketvar continued, is the report that you formed an emergency bond with a human during the molt. Is this accurate? Yes, Elder. The bond was successful. The 3 elderly Chitros conferred among themselves in their native language, their translators not picking up the rapid clicks and whistles. Finally, Ketvar spoke again. This has not occurred in over 3 centuries. Emergency bonding with alien species was declared impractical and abandoned. The success rate was too low, the risk too high. How did you accomplish this? Velthar's antennae twitched. The human coordinator Taewon refused to abandon me. He researched Chitros biology using available databases. He improvised solutions using equipment not designed for bonding rituals, and he maintained communication throughout the molt, keeping my rational mind engaged as long as possible. The human did this? Without training? Without proper preparation? Yes, Elder. There was a long silence. The 3 Chitros conferred again, this time for several minutes. Taewon shifted nervously. He had no idea if this was going well or badly. Velthar stood perfectly still, his posture formal and submissive. Finally, Elder Ketvar spoke again, and his tone had changed. Less formal, more curious. We would like to speak with this human. Coordinator Taewon, will you answer our questions? Taewon stepped forward, trying not to show how nervous he felt. Yes, Elder, I'll answer whatever I can. Why did you stay in the cargo bay when you could have attempted escape? Because Velthar needed help, and because I thought we could find a solution together. You risked your life for a courier you had only professional contact with. This seems illogical. Maybe, but leaving someone alone when they're in pain and scared seemed worse than the risk. Another pause. Another conference in untranslated Chitros. Then a different elder spoke, a female with particularly long antennae. You maintained communication with Velthar throughout the molt. What did you talk about? Everything. His homeworld. His family, my family. Stories from our past. Anything to keep him present and focused. And you improvised a rhythm pulse to simulate biological bonding. How did you conceive of this solution? I read in the database that Chitros recognize safety through consistent rhythms. So I used a scanner to broadcast my heartbeat pattern. I thought if Velthar's instincts could hear something steady and non-threatening, it might help. And you offered your blood for chemical bonding, knowing the danger. It wasn't a question, but Taewon answered anyway. Yes, it seemed like the best option at the time. The female elder's antennae moved in a pattern Taewon couldn't interpret. Coordinator Taewon, you displayed knowledge of Chitros biology, improvisational thinking, and willingness to accept personal risk for the benefit of another species. These are remarkable traits. Thank you, Elder. They are also, she continued, traits that humanity has become known for throughout the galactic community. You are not the first human to do something illogical in service of compassion. Your species has a reputation for this. Taewon wasn't sure if that was a compliment or criticism. Elder Ketvar spoke again. The collective must consider this situation carefully. 3 months had passed since the molt incident. Station Garrison 7 had changed in subtle but significant ways. The xenobiological research program was in full operation, with scientists from multiple species studying the bond between Taiwan and Velthar. But more importantly, the culture of the station had shifted. Taiwan noticed it in small ways. The mess hall had become more integrated, with humans and aliens sitting together more often. The cargo bay had instituted cross-species training sessions, teaching humans about alien biology and teaching aliens about human customs. People were talking to each other more, learning about each other more, seeing each other as individuals rather than just co-workers. His new role as xenobiological liaison kept him busy. He mediated disputes between species with different communication styles. He helped design better accommodations for aliens with unique environmental needs. He taught courses on cross-species interaction. And through it all, Velthar was there, providing perspective from the alien side of things. The bond between them had deepened over time. Taiwan could sense Velthar's presence within about 50 meters now, a constant awareness at the edge of his consciousness. When they were close, he could feel the alien's emotional state with surprising clarity, and Velthar, with his more sensitive Chitros perception, could track Taiwan anywhere on the station. It was strange at first, having that level of connection with someone. There were moments when Taiwan missed the privacy of existing in his own head completely. But mostly he found it comforting. He was never truly alone anymore, and neither was Velthar. Today, Velthar was scheduled to depart on his first delivery run since the molt. It was a short route just to the nearby research station on Kepler-3 and back. But it would be the first time they'd been separated by more than a few kilometers since the bonding. Taiwan stood in the cargo bay, watching Velthar load his ship. The alien moved with his usual efficiency, each container placed precisely. His new exoskeleton had taken on a slightly darker shade over the months, and he moved with even more confidence than before. "Are you ready for this?" Taiwan asked, Velthar's antennae oriented toward him. "I am, though I admit to some nervousness about the separation. We have not tested the bond at interstellar distances. The researchers said it should hold. The chemical bond doesn't rely on proximity." "The chemical bond, no. But the emotional connection may feel different when we are far apart. We'll find out." "You'll be gone for what, 3 days?" 2 days if the weather holds at Kepler-3. 3 if there are complications." Velthar paused in his loading. "Will you be all right without me nearby?" Taiwan smiled. "I survived 30-plus years without being bonded to anyone. I think I can handle a few days. That was before you knew what connection felt like. It is harder to be alone once you have experienced true companionship." Wise words from my alien friend. "I am learning wisdom from watching humans. You are excellent teachers of things you do not realize you are teaching." They finished the loading in comfortable silence. Other cargo bay workers moved around them, going about their duties. A few waved at Velthar or called out good wishes for his trip. The Chitros courier had become something of a celebrity on the station, though he still seemed uncomfortable with the attention. "Before I depart," Velthar said, "I want to tell you something. The collective has been monitoring our bond closely. They have reports from dozens of Chitros who have molted since our success, all asking if they might form similar bonds with trusted companions of other species." "Really? That many?" "The idea of not being alone during molt, of having a bond partner to help through the transition, it appeals to many Chitros, especially those who work far from home as I do. We are a solitary species by nature, but even solitary beings need connection sometimes." "What does the collective think about this?" They are cautiously optimistic. They want more data, more successful bondings, but they acknowledge that what we accomplished has opened possibilities they thought were closed forever. Velthar's mandibles clicked softly. "You have changed things, Taiwan. Not just for me, but for my entire species. We changed things together. I couldn't have done it without you fighting to stay rational during the molt. And I would have failed without you refusing to abandon me." A voice crackled over the cargo bay intercom. "Courier Velthar, you're cleared for departure. Launch window opens in 15 minutes. "Acknowledged," Velthar responded. He turned back to Taiwan. "I should board now." "Safe travels," Taiwan said. "Come back in one piece. I will return in 2.3 days. And Taiwan, thank you for everything." Velthar's antennae brushed against Taiwan's shoulder one last time, then the alien boarded his ship. The cargo bay doors sealed, and Taiwan retreated to the observation window to watch the departure. The ship detached smoothly from the docking clamp and maneuvered toward open space. Within minutes, it had engaged its faster-than-light drive and vanished from view. Taiwan felt the bond stretch but not break. Velthar's presence in his mind faded to a distant echo, like hearing someone call from far away. It was unsettling, that sudden distance after months of constant proximity, but it was also proof that the bond was real, was lasting, was more than just chemical tricks and desperate measures. He returned to his office and dove into work. There were reports to write, meetings to attend, training sessions to plan. His new role kept him busy enough that he barely noticed the time passing. 2 days later, Taiwan was in the middle of a meeting with Ji-Hai when he felt it. A surge of emotion through the bond strong enough to make him gasp. Fear, urgent fear. Taiwan, Ji-Hai asked. What's wrong? Something's happening to Velthar. Something bad. How do you know? The bond. I can feel his fear. He's in trouble. Ji-Hai immediately pulled up her console. He's not due back for another 6 hours. Let me contact Kepler 3 station. She worked quickly, her fingers flying across the controls. After a tense minute, she got a response. Kepler 3 reports that Velthar departed on schedule. His ship's tracking beacon is active and showing normal flight path. No distress signals. But Taiwan could still feel it, that spike of fear through the bond. Something was wrong, even if the official systems showed otherwise. Permission to take a shuttle, he said. I need to check on him. Taiwan, his ship is perfectly— Commander, please. The bond doesn't lie. He's afraid of something. Ji-Hai studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. Take Shuttle 3. I'll have flight operations track your course. But if this turns out to be nothing, we're going to have a serious discussion about using station resources for false alarms. Understood. Taiwan ran to the shuttle bay, his heart pounding. He didn't know what was wrong, couldn't pinpoint the specific danger. He only knew that Velthar needed help, and the bond was pulling him toward his friend with undeniable urgency. He cleared launch protocols in record time and guided the shuttle along Velthar's projected flight path. The bond grew stronger as he closed the distance, the sense of fear sharpening into something more specific. Not fear of death, fear of failure, fear of losing control. Finally, his sensors picked up Velthar's ship. It was drifting, its engines dark. No damage visible, no signs of attack or mechanical failure. Just a ship floating dead in space. Taiwan hailed the vessel. Velthar, this is Taiwan. Respond, please. Datic, he hailed again. Velthar, I'm coming aboard. Whatever's happening, we'll handle it together. This time there was a response. Velthar's voice came through the comm, tight with strain. Taiwan, you should not be here. It is not safe. What's wrong? What happened? The molt. It should not be happening again so soon. But it is. The new exoskeleton is defective, unstable. I am molting again only 3 months after the last time. This is not normal. This should not be possible. Taiwan's blood ran cold. Another molt so soon after the first. No wonder Velthar was terrified. His body shouldn't be doing this. Something was wrong, badly wrong. I'm docking with your ship, Taiwan said firmly. Don't try to stop me, the instinct will come. I may hurt you. The bond may not be strong enough if the molt is abnormal. Then we'll make it strong enough. We did it once, we can do it again. He maneuvered the shuttle to Velthar's airlock and connected. The docking seal engaged with a hiss. Taiwan grabbed an emergency medical kit and cycled through the airlocks. He found Velthar in the cargo hold, curled in the corner just like last time. But this molt looked different. The cracks in his exoskeleton were erratic, uneven, clear fluid mixed with something darker, possibly blood. Velthar was shaking, all 4 arms wrapped around himself. Taiwan, Velthar whispered. I disabled my ship's engines to prevent myself from causing an accident when the instinct takes over. But I did not expect you to come. Did not want you to risk yourself again. Too bad. I'm here. Taiwan knelt a safe distance away. Tell me what's different this time. What's causing the early molt? I do not know. Perhaps the first molt was incomplete. Perhaps the bonding process affected my biology in unexpected ways. The medical researchers warned this might happen, but I did not believe them. Okay, we'll figure it out later. Right now, we need to get you through this. You do not have your scanner.